Hashem Yisrael. Sheikh Yisrael Mikamocha. I think Baruch Hai went to get me. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, Rabotai. Parashat Lecha. What a parasha. How apropos. We just talked about the million-man atzeret that happened in Eretz HaKodesh, and it's a wonderful Kiddush Hashem and standing up for the pillar of Torah. Essentially, it's very unfortunate in a different direction because you have essentially a nation that doesn't understand what it's fighting for, which is very sad, because if you're attacking Lomdei Torah, you're attacking the heart of what Am Yisrael represents. And it's really the nation of Am Yisrael, its whole purpose is to defend, is to fight for the Torah. So it's unfortunate that you have heads of army that are literally their purpose, their reason to exist is to fight for the Bnei Yeshivot. And instead of that, a completely different mission, which is not even clear. Like, what are we fighting for? Western values? Like, just to be like America, just so we should have a constitution? Of course, we're fighting for the preservation of Torah and Yiddishkeit and Judaism. So if that's what we're fighting for, how could we attack? How could we at all strain the Bnei Yeshivot in any form, fashion, or direction where they are the soul of Am Yisrael and the soul of the survival? And that's essentially the reason to cry out, and that's the reason to say tefillot and to say Tehillim. Us in America, what can we do in America? We could pray for our brothers in Eretz Yisrael. We have to be noseh be'or chavero. We can't view this as something simple. It's existential. It really is. It's much more existential than any enemy abroad. Any enemy on the outside does not threaten Am Yisrael because we have a promise from Hashem. But what threatens us the most is the spiritual battle, is something that's in our hands, that we have to take the matter into our own hands. So if that's the case, it's something that certainly every person in America has to make sure it's not a Yisrael problem, it's a Jewish problem. It's a problem for all of Am Yisrael, is Etzara Hile Yaakov. And that's the reason that so many yeshivot were willing to literally shut their doors down and get outside the yeshiva and send all of their students in Israel to protest. Because it's Talmud Torah keneged kulam, but the preservation of Talmud Torah even precedes Talmud Torah itself. The honor of the Torah and the preservation of the Torah comes before the Torah. So it was a unanimous decision to send all the Bnei Yeshiva, whether it was Sfaradim, Ashkenazim, Hasidim, of all the sects and all the branches. And to me it was fascinating because I actually saw that even the religious Zionists, which are a sect in Judaism that were for the army, they also said that which was a surprise to me, they also said absolutely, and everybody should protest and join, because to force Bnei Yeshiva to do anything is wrong, and certainly to go against the Ratzon Hashem is doubly wrong. Why is it connected to this week's parasha? Why is this important for us to know? I think it's very much indicative of an ignorance in history. So we'll go back to history. We're going to do a little bit of a history class, but this is going to be exciting history that you probably haven't heard before. And if you did, it was probably because I mentioned it a few years ago. It's probably three years ago. What's the Chazal? The Chazal tell us, the Rashi is on this week's parasha. Rashi says as follows. On the Pasuk tells us Avraham Avinu was commanded to go to Eretz Yisrael from Haran, which is basically the Middle East, Iraq, in those territories. He was commanded to go to Eretz Yisrael. And the Torah tells us a line, it says, V'akinani az ba'aretz. It informs us historical fact that there were people on that land called the Canaanim. Now anybody knows Canaan, the Canaanim came from Canaan, and Canaan was one of the sons of Ham. He was the fourth son of Ham, who was the son of Noach. So this is the grandson of Noach. His nation was living on the land. There were 7 umot, Canaani, Girgashi, Yavusi, all the umot of the children of Ham. They were living on the land. The Torah emphasizes that, and Rashi gives us a little bit more details. HaKenani az ba'aretz, they were just holech v'kovesh et Eretz Yisrael. They were pillaging the land. Basically, the Kenaanim came in and took over the land of Eretz Canaan. Mizar'o shel Shem. Now, who were they taking it from? They were taking it from the children of Shem. So we have three children, right? Famously, Noach, Shem, Ham, and Yefet. So the children of Ham, which were Canaan, were taking the land from Shem and his Zar'o and his children. Shebechilko shel Shem nafla kishehalak Noach et haaretz. The portion of Eretz Yisrael belonged to Shem as Noach divided it and gave it to him. And says the Kadosh Baruch Hu to Avraham Avinu, I'm going to give you this land. Atid ani leachzira levanecha. In the future, this land is going to return to your children, meaning it was stolen from Shem and from the children of Shem, and now I'm going to return it back to your children, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Avraham Avinu. Shem mizar'o shel Shem. Your children are the children, the great-great-grandchildren of Shem, and therefore they're going to have it back. So there's a little bit of a problem with this Rashi. Basically, what Rashi is saying in a nutshell, if up until now you weren't paying a careful attention, now you can pay careful attention, is the land belonged to Shem, belonged to his children, were stolen from Shem by Ham, by Canaan, and Hashem says to Avraham Avinu, I'm going to give it back to you and your children because you're the children of Shem. Okay, that's wonderful. That's just a problem because it contradicts Rashi. Rashi in the first Rashi of the Torah, Amar Bi Yitzhak, Rashi says, Koach ma'asav igid le'amo latet le'im nahalat goyim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu started the Sefer Torah from Bereshit, very famous Rashi, in order to inform Am Yisrael of his actions. So that when the Goyim come and tell the Jewish people, you're thieves, you stole our land, Am Yisrael will say the following words. Says, where is this? This is a long Rashi. It's always hard to find the first one. He says, She'im yomru umot ha'olam liYisrael. If the UN decides to come to Am Yisrael and tell them, Listim altem, you are colonizers of a land that's not yours. Shekavashtem artzot shiv'a goyim, you conquered the 7 nations of Canaan. You could tell them back. Kol haaretz shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all the land belongs to Hashem. Hu bera'a v'netana la'asher yashar beinav. He created, Bereshit bara Elokim, he created the land, he gave it to whoever he wants to give it to. Birtzono nitena lahem, ubirtzono nitela mehem v'natena lanu. Hashem gave it to them, Hashem took it away from them. Our land, and there's nothing you could do about it. That's the response that Am Yisrael has. The only question is, the whole starting point is off. If you put these two Rashis together, they don't add up. Because Rashi Parashat Bereshit is saying that the Goyim are going to come and claim that it's stolen land. And what's our answer? Our answer is, listen, it's Hashem's world. He took it from you and he gave it to us. Tough luck. And Rashi in Parashat Lech Lecha is saying the opposite. The Canaanim stole the land from Shem. So they're the thieves. Right? Because Shem was the original owner of the land. He was the one that got it from Noach. Canaanim went and stole it. And now I'm returning it to you, Avraham Avinu. So that means that they're the thieves, not ours. We're not the thieves. So then why did you say that they're going to accuse us of being thieves? There's a simple answer. You could say a thief always blames the other person for being the thief. Right? That's a simple answer. But if you really look at Rashi carefully, it doesn't make sense. Because Rashi says it was given to them, and now it's given to us. If it was stolen, then it wasn't given to them. It was stolen. So that's question number 1. Okay, everybody gets the question? It's a good question. Question number 2, I'll ask a second question. Let's say a scenario, okay? You have a great-great-grandfather. He had $5 million in the bank. Nobody touched the money because they didn't know it existed. His son died, didn't know it existed. His grandson died, didn't know it existed. The great-grandson didn't know it existed. Great-grandchildren, one of them does research. He's a historian. He finds out records and all of this. He finds that my great-great-great-grandfather has in the bank, a Swiss bank over there, he has $5 million. He discovers this and he goes to the bank and he claims the money. He shows that he's proof of a grandchild. They give him the money. Is he allowed to keep all this money? What's the halacha? Yeah, Meir, what do you say? The whole thing? Yeah, 100%? Yeah, final answer? What do you guys say? Everybody agree? You can keep it? Nope. He can't keep all the money. He can keep some of it. He's not the only great-great-great-grandkid. It's an inheritance. It's an inheritance, right? It belonged to the great-great-grandfather. He is one, but there's other inheritors. He's not the only inheritor. So there's all the other great-great-great-grandkids also deserve a part of that 5 million. It doesn't just belong to him. Why does it belong to him? Because he's a great-great-grandchild, but there's other great-great-grandchildren. So he's mechuyav to take the money and split it amongst all the people. He'll get whatever fraction of those descendants that are discoverable and provable. You can't just go ahead and make a claim. You have to prove it. But if they can prove that they're Bemet great-great-grandchildren, they deserve a share. So if that's the case, there's a very strong question. Okay, so the land was taken from Shem and his children. And who took it? Ham and his children. Now says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I'm going to give this land back to you, Avraham Avinu. Wait, slow down. I'm going to give that back to Avraham Avinu. It was stolen from Shem. All of his great-great-grandchildren deserve the land. Why are you only giving it to Avraham? As Avraham is from the child of the child of the child of Shem. Says Rashi, okay, that's very nice. So give him a 20th of the land. Why are you giving him the whole land? Doesn't seem to make sense. There's another question. If we took this argument to court in the beginning of Rashi, right? The first Rashi Parashat Bereshit. Guy comes to you and says, you stole this from me. And you say, listen, Hashem created heaven and earth. And he owns the whole world. And he gave it to you. And he took it away from you. Get out of here. What would you say back to him? Are you crazy? I'm saying you stole this from me, and you're saying Hashem wanted this to happen. What kind of an answer is that? If Am Yisrael are being accused of being thieves, right? Because they came and they waged a war against the nation and took the land, what kind of a response is it to say, well, it's Hashem's land and he took it from you and gave it to us? No, you stole it from me. That's my claim. So what kind of a response is it to say, well, it's from Hashem? It sounds a little bit off. So Rabotai, here's a little bit of a history lesson. Let's go back to the beginning of time. Adam Arishon. Adam Arishon had how many children originally? Originally, he had 2 children, right? Who are they? Cain and Hevel. They split the world 50-50. He gets half the world, he gets the northern hemisphere, he gets the southern hemisphere, however they split it. 50-50. But generations continued, and there was a Mabul. And the Mabul wiped out everybody. Only Noach remained. Vayishar ach Noach. Noach remains. He has 3 children. Shem, Ham, and Yefet. Now, the world needs to be resplit because you have a lot of real estate, right? The entire world, not a single human being outside of Noach and his children. So it needs to be split. So Noach divided the land incredibly. He said, Yefet, Europe. You get all of Europe. And Bemet Yefet, all of his children, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavan, Tuval, Meshech, Vetiras. You look at the Targum, you look at the translation, Switzerland, Germany, Greece, Italy, all these lands. It's unbelievable. Yefet, all of his children are like still today, the lands are still named after the names of his children. Which means that he was given Europe. And Ham, you can imagine, what was Ham given? Ham was given Africa. He was given an entire continent called Africa. And Shem was given Asia. Everything that's Asia today, whatever is east of the Mediterranean, essentially belongs to Shem. That was all for Shem and his children. So that's how the continents were split up. What about America and Australia? Who cared about America and Australia? Back then, it was totally impractical. You couldn't do anything with it. Today, now America is like sort of colonized by Europe, so it's considered, I guess, part of Yefet, seemingly. But that was the makeup, that was the break of the split. That was during the times of the Mabul. Noach split everything, wonderful, everything's great. A few 100 years pass, and comes a new generation. And this generation says, it's boring living alone. What do you have, the whole Africa? What am I going to do with the whole Africa? I'm going to be there together with the lions? And the Europeans also, the Bnei Yefet, they weren't interested in having such land because it's uninhabitable to inhabit such land. They all decided to come together. They said, we're going to meet in the middle, and we're going to centralize. It's too much. So this was the meeting. Where's the middle? Bavel. Iraq, you have, Bavel is like basically pretty centralized. It's Western Asia. Asia is very big. And it's pretty much in the middle between all 3, Africa, Europe, and that's it. They were going to meet together. And this is why it's called Bavel. Balal, it was a mixture. They all decided, we don't like this breakup. Whatever Noach did doesn't work with us. We don't want these lines. They're too far away, to this. We're far away from everybody. We want to be centralized. And they decided that Bavel would be the perfect place to centralize. That's what they did. And this was the whole yesod of Migdal Bavel, was they determined that all of the lands that we had up until now, we are relinquishing and redividing it in a new way, in a new format that's much more reasonable and much more appropriate. This is why the Canaanim came to Eretz Yisrael, and they took it over. They said, look, nobody from Shem has any more claims to this land. It now belongs to whoever claims it, and we're going to claim it. So even though they were officially from Africa, and they didn't deserve any portion of it, as he said, but once the Migdal Bavel happened, and everybody relinquished their ownership for a unified UN-style front of everybody is together, we're going to go with communism, we're going to go with nobody owns land, nobody has real estate, everything is ifker. That's what they did. But then Migdal Bavel happened, and Hashem said, no, everybody's going to be split up. Misham hefitzam al penei chol haaretz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu spread out all the people, different languages, different everything. They realized they have no choice but to disunify. So then the Canaanim came and they said, we want this land. This land's a good land. Let's stay here. We're not going all the way to Africa. And they took over the land. From who did they take it from? From Bnei Shem. Was it legitimate? It was legitimate. Right? Because everybody relinquished their ownership. So now, it's beautiful except for one problem. There was one man who was 48 years old at the time of the building of Migdal Bavel, and his name was Avraham Avinu. And he didn't exactly go with this plan, because he didn't believe in Nimrod, in Avodah Zarah, in the unification. He believed in the same way that Noach believed. He said, I'm not relinquishing, I have my portion, and I'm not giving it up, just to join all these people. So Avraham Avinu stayed Me'ever HaYarden, he stayed on the other side. He didn't go ahead and participate in all this. So while all the children of Ham were essentially correct that they were allowed the land, there was just one problem. There's still a descendant of Shem that never relinquished his ownership of Asia. And he deserves his portion. And says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you know which portion is yours, Avraham Avinu? This land called Canaan. It belongs to you. And it was stolen from you, and it's going to be given back to you. And that's the truth. Am Yisrael makes a legitimate claim. It's not that we stole the land, it was our land. And Adirabba, anybody that lived in that land, whether it was the Canaanim from 3,000 years ago, or whether it is the Pilishtim of today, the Palestinians of today, they're all living on stolen land. It lands that belongs to us. It belonged to Avraham Avinu from the time of Noach. It belonged to Avraham Avinu. It was stolen unlawfully from him and was returned by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's the idea of Koach Ma'asav Yigid Le'amo. You know how many millions of children in Eretz Yisrael don't know this? You're lucky. The ones over there in the back. All of you there, you're lucky. You know right now what millions of children that live in Israel don't know on their own land that they live in, that they're not living on stolen land. They were taught, they're always being taught, that the land that we live on belonged to the Palestinians, and before that it was the British, and before that it was the Ottoman Empire, and before that there were these nations called the Canaanites, and the Jews were later in the picture. It's not the truth. Now you know the truth. This land belonged to us since Noach left the Teva, and he was the only person in the world that had all the land, any and all the land. It was given to the children of Shem. It was given to Avraham Avinu. He never relinquished that ownership. It belonged to him. So that's our land. It's as legitimate as it gets. And anybody that lives on that land is living on our land, and we should charge him rent for living on our land. From now on, everybody that's there should be charged rent, including all the churches that are there. And then we should evict them after a year's time. We should evict all of them. We shouldn't let them stay. It's asul. The fee the deen, there you can't have avodah zarah in the land. Absolutely, the goyim have to keep sheva mitzvot b'nei Noach in the land of Eretz Yisrael, because it's the land that was given to us by Hashem. If it's given to us by Hashem, it has to follow the rules that Hashem provided in the guidelines as per the contract, which is the Torah. That is our deed and entitlement to the land. And therefore, we should all know that this land belongs to us, and therefore there's no reason to compromise. Land that belongs to Am Yisrael, it's ours. Why should someone come and take it? Why should we give it to anybody? We shouldn't make compromises. Who are going to tell us? The French? They're going to tell us. The British? They're going to tell us to make compromise. They could compromise their own land, which they already have, unfortunately. It's already belonging to the entire Muslim population. We're not interested in doing that because we have a Torah and the Torah tells us exactly what it is. And that's why this parasha is so important. If every Jew, every child learned this parasha when they were your ages, 10 years old, 12 years old, they learned these parasha, they would know these facts. It would empower an entire state, an entire region. All of Eretz Yisrael will be empowered to know this land belongs to me. I'm not giving it up for anything. Of course not. And then that's what we have to feel, and that's what we have to know, and carry that with us. Yes, Israel, I'm going to call on you. It's apropos. Yes.
You didn't come from Ishmael, correct?
No. No, that has nothing to do with Ishmael. The Palestinians come from Ishmael.
Yeah, so
Pelishtim is Pelishit. They actually are, in their name, the word Pelishit means pillagers. They pillaged the land. They themselves didn't belong there. So it's very interesting. That's even the Pelishtim of old, which have nothing to do with the Palestinians, which are Arabs. They're not two separate things. But the Palestinians are from Ishmael, yes.
So technically, they also have right to the land.
No, that's not true. That's not true, because what does it say? Avraham Avinu was told to kick Ishmael out. And the reason he was told to kick Ishmael out is because he's not considered the inheritance of Avraham Avinu. And this is why we say, Ki biyitzhak yikare lecha zara, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That was the dispute. Avraham Avinu thought like you. Avraham Avinu actually thought like you. It's not a bad argument what you're saying. Avraham Avinu said, what do you mean? But this is my son, this is my son. Sarah was the one that told him to kick him out. And Avraham Avinu says, but they both should inherit. And Sarah says, he's not going to inherit. And what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu say? Ki biyitzhak yikare lecha zara. She's right. Kol asher tomar elecha Sarah shma bekola. Because Yitzhak is going to be your child. So not only Yitzhak, by the way, it says Yitzhak. Because otherwise, the Romans, right, Edom, could also make a claim. Where does Edom come from? It comes from Amalek. Where does Amalek come from? It comes from Esav. Where does Esav come from? It comes from Yitzhak. So it says, Yitzhak. It says, Yitzhak velo kol Yitzhak. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in Yitzhak, yikare lecha zara. It doesn't say all of Yitzhak. What does it mean in Yitzhak? One child of Yitzhak, yikare lecha zara. Who is that? That's Yaakov Avinu. So that's out with Yishmael and out with Esav. They're not included in the inheritance. That's psukim mefurashim. It's explicit psukim that they're not included in the inheritance. But they do have somewhat of an inkling on the land, because when Am Yisrael ve'aya kasher tarid ufarakta ulo milad tzavarecha, since Esav and together also as well as Ishmael were given this deal that Am Yisrael doesn't conduct themselves appropriately to the level that Am Yisrael is degrading itself in Torah and in mitzvot, you're going to be in control. And this is why we see that America, which is the offspring of Esav essentially, is very much in control of Eretz Yisrael. They dictate what's going to happen, what they allow. President Trump just went about maybe a month ago. He said, I'm not going to let Israel annex the West Bank, as if he has any rights to claim that he's not going to let. Who are you to make any claims? As good as we appreciate President Trump and everything that he did for Am Yisrael, but you have no right to say such thing. We'll decide if we'll annex it, if it makes sense for us or it doesn't make sense for us. But it has nothing to do with him. He has no say in the matter. What is this line that he owns the whole world? It's Hashem's world, and Am Yisrael will annex it when Hashem wants us to annex it. It has nothing to do with President Trump. This is not connected to him. It doesn't mean that it's the right necessarily thing to do today, tomorrow, but still. It's not a decision that's made by the United States. Elama, why is he making such claims? Very simple. When Am Yisrael does not act according to the level and standards of the contract of the Torah, so then he says Yishmael is going to be in control, Esav is going to be in control, and they're going to dictate to you. Yeah, they're going to dictate what you're able to do, what you're not able to do, what they're going to be okay with. You can bomb over here, but you can't bomb over there. You get these weapons, but you can't use those weapons. They're going to dictate to you. Why are they dictating to us? Very simple, because we're not on the level we need to be. The minute we are, nobody's going to be dictating. We'll be dictating to everybody else what we're deciding to do and what we're not deciding to do. But halevai, we should get there. Mitzvot Hashem, through the power of Torah, we'll get there. But it is so important to understand the history of what we are connected to this land. It doesn't even stem from Avraham Avinu. It stems from before Avraham Avinu. But Avraham Avinu was the one that really gave us the claim to the land, because he didn't go along with what everybody else was doing. Which takes us to a different lesson that's very important in this week's parasha. And it really stems from Rabbeinu Behaye. Rabbeinu Behaye talks about the idea of Lech Lecha, which is a very repetitive term. A lot of commentaries focus, but he says like a very nice spin on it. He says Lech Lecha also sounds very similar to a different word. Lech Lecha. Say it quickly. Lech Lecha. Lichluch. There's lichluch in Hebrew means dirt, soil. And he says the reason Hashem was giving Avraham Avinu, the reason why I want you to leave is because the land you're in is somewhat contaminated. And I want you to get out of that land because it's going to have an effect on you. And this is such a huge thing because you say to yourself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is commanding Avraham Avinu to leave the land of Haran because it's going to have a negative effect on him. It's going to dirty him. It's going to soil him. And therefore he has to move to a different location. Small question. What's Avraham Avinu's name before the Avinu? Avraham, he was called Ha'ivri. What does Ha'ivri mean?
The other side.
It means me'ever l'naha, means that everybody would do one thing and Avraham Avinu would be the guy that does the opposite. Everything that they would decide is the common knowledge and wisdom of the time. Avraham said, no. You believe in Avodah Zarah? You're wrong. You think that there's all these types of gods? That's not true. There aren't. There's just Hashem. Hashem Echad. He created heaven and earth and everything around. And all of the various norms and cultures that were accepted in his time, Avraham Avinu stood up against that. So if there's one person in the whole entire world that actually will not be influenced, perhaps you will sort of feed off of it, is Avraham Avinu. He's different than everybody else. Why are you telling him, Lech Lecha, go out of here, you're going to get soiled, you're going to get dirty? Says the Rambam, a very important yesod. Everybody should read this Rambam. Derech beriyato shel Adam. The creation of man. It is the biology and the science of the makeup of man is of such that he is influenced by his surrounding. It just is. And therefore, he says, the Rambam, he has to make sure to put himself in a good surrounding because he's going to be influenced from it. What the Rambam is saying is that this is nature. Let me give an example. Let's say a person is sick. He has a virus. And you say to yourself, look, I know he's sick. I know it's contagious. I'm going to stand next to him and I'm not going to be affected. I'll say 7 Neshem Yehuds. I'll go ahead and I'll read Tehillim. I'm not going to be affected. Doesn't work. Why? Because there's science. There's biology. There's how things work. Hakor bidei shamayim chutz mi tzinim pachim. Tosfot. Masechet Ketuvot, I believe. The Gemara talks about this. So you can't just go ahead and put yourself in a place where there's diseases and there's viruses and say, well, I'm not going to get sick. Well, that's not how it works. What about him?
He used to sit with the sick people, holding.
I thought we'd get to Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi's level. He's a different story, but they weren't contagious.
He jumped the fence.
They weren't contagious. There's some sicknesses, a guy has a broken leg. There's nothing contagious about it. But if you have a contagious sickness, the Rambam is saying this is a sickness. It's contagious. When people have bad midot, you cannot go ahead and say, I'll be there and I won't be influenced. I'm not going to learn from them. That's just simply not how HaKadosh Baruch Hu designed the world. If Avraham Avinu, who was the furthest person away, and he could have set himself up, I would just go in his own Daled Amod, build up a nice wall, 10 Amod high. You won't go associate with anybody. You'll just live with you and Hashem, and it'll be one. No, it's not going to work. Why is it not going to work? Because it's in the air. If there's smoke in the air, it's going to affect you, and that's what happens. A person has to know that you can't just go ahead and surround yourself. Sometimes we say no. Bad influence, that's for children. They have to be careful to not have bad influence. For me, it's already, I'm an adult. I am who I am. It's not true. A person can be influenced negatively, even without the children. You can have bad influence. Sometimes they say, somebody says negative language, inappropriate language, they curse. And you say, oh, it's just, children are here. No, what children? I'm here. What's children? I'm here. You shouldn't curse because I'm here. I don't want to be influenced. It's not because of the kids. Sometimes people say just out of nimus, I'm with you, but that's not the right way. It's not. It's going to affect everybody. And that's the mentality that we have to have. Even so much so that it says that Yishai, the father of David, he once sent him on a mission. Pasuk says, essentially, Lech na re'eh b'shelom achecha, v'et shelom atzon v'ashiveni davar. Go, this says, Pasuk says by Yaakov, I borrowed it. But it says, V'et arbatam tikah. And take their arbatam. What does it mean, their arbatam? Says Yishai to David, different explanations. One of them was take their bill of divorce because they're going to battle. And that's the Gemara's explanation. But the Targum there says, go find out how they are spiritually. And Yishai, as it's explained, the Meiri explains this, Yishai sent David and he said, I want to see where they're holding. So how's David, he's going to take, he's going to take a litmus test? What is he going to find out? He's going to take a barometer? He's going to measure their spirituality? His father told him, I want you to notice, pay attention, ten da'atcha, to see who they are talking to, who they are friends with, who they're hanging out with. And from there, I'll already be able to assess where their spirituality is. Just to show you how much of an effect. This is the children of Yishai. Yishai was the Gedol Adol, the leader of the generation. His children were giants, to the level that Shmuel thought that each one of them was worthy of being a king of Am Yisrael. So these were very huge people. And still Yishai said, if their circle around them is negative, then they're going to be affected negatively. And then I'll know their spiritual state is low. And if not, if they're surrounded by good people, then they'll be good. But see how much of an effect, how much it matters, how much we have to be careful that we separate ourselves. Sometimes every person has people that in their lives, in their circles, that are very positive influences. And some people are very negative influences. And it doesn't even mean that they're bad people. In Shammai, maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, based on their situation, based on their circumstance, they're tzaddikim gumurim. In the life that they lived, in the abuse. There's nothing to do with that. It's not about that. It's about, at the end of the day, you're going to be influenced. You're going to be lech. You're going to be getting dirty as a result of that. So it really doesn't matter if they're in their own world doing the best that they can, but if they have negative hashpaot, influences, they talk not appropriately, they act not appropriately, they think not appropriately. Sometimes negativity is very contagious. One person could be living fine, everything is great, and then somebody comes in his life. You ever notice this about your business partner, that he does X, Y, and Z? You don't realize that? And then all of a sudden, wow, he's cheating me out. He's this, he's robbing me, he's not doing fair. And all of a sudden, his whole vision just flips. This is a negative person with one negative comment. Could take 20 years of the guy's life where he's living happily ever after and ruin everything for him. That's negative influence. A person surrounds himself with that. You can imagine how destructive that is, how negative of a force. So there are people in every community. There are people that are great and excellent and have good perspectives and are good. And there are people that are a force of negativity that are just you might think you're invincible, but you're not. You're a human being. And we all are, and we're all effective. Avraham Avinu was the greatest human being. The reason Hashem said it in Parashat Lecha specifically is to tell you that even though there's an Avraham Avinu, but he needs to leave his country because he's going to be affected negatively if it's going to come down to it. So how much of importance is, of course, we're not saying extremely, okay, leave the country, leave the city. That's not the point. Because, hey, where are you going to go? What's better? This is another question. But that's the point is just your immediate surrounding on a very basic level. We're not Avraham Avinu, but on our basic level, immediate surrounding. Is it good? Is it kasher? Are there people there? Our children, are they surrounded with good friends? And if they're not, distance them. Don't let your children, don't say, oh, but I don't want to be that parent that distances friends. I don't want to be that not cool parent. No, you'll be that non-cool parent. It's good. It'll be perfectly fine. You'll distance your children away from bad influences. It's not worth it for them to be influenced negatively, especially in today's times, where very unfortunately, it just takes one person in one situation and they could ruin a child forever. Whether it's addiction, it's so many addictions. You name it, you fill in the blank. There's just so many of them out in the world, and it's just an introducing of the wrong person in the wrong situation, and that's it. A lot of your parenting just went down the drain because it doesn't mean anything if you have bad influences. And that's the importance, the value that we have to give. We have a huge responsibility to ourselves and to our children, both. And they're absolutely true, and it's vadai very important, and there's no such thing as immunity in this sense. There's also another ma'alach here. There's a famous quote in Hebrew. I don't know what the quote is in English, but maybe somebody here knows. It's called En Navi Be'iro. You ever heard this? En Navi Be'iro means a prophet does not exist in his city. Now what does that mean? So the Chazal explain, the Khatam Sofer brings down that expression. Some say that it came from non-Jews, but it's not true. The Khatam Sofer quotes it. And he says that En Navi Be'iro is applicable to Avraham Avinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted him to leave because to become great, you can't be in that city that you were born and raised in. There's a very simple reason. To become great, people have to respect you. People have a very difficult time respecting somebody that they saw grow up. that they saw him as a child and they spent time with him, they saw that, it's going to be hard. So there's an expression is, En Navi Be'iro. A Navi, a prophet, somebody great as a prophet. In the city, he's just, he's buddies. I remember him when I was growing up. We were both together in the same class and we spent time together. En Navi Be'iro. As one time, this is a great story with the O Sameach. The O Sameach was a Gaon Olam, Gadol Ador, right? Rabbi Simcha Meir of Devinsk. And he one time essentially sent in his resume, as they would say today. He was Magish Mu'madut. He applied for the job of the city in Bialystok to be a Rav, the Rav of the city. Bialystok was the country that he was, city that he was raised in, born and raised in. And he wanted to be the Rav. They needed a Rav. The Rav died, passed away, and he wanted to take over. So he submitted his application, and the heads of the city were not interested. Oh, Sameach. He's a great man. The Mishra Chochmah. He wrote these massive Sfarim today to this very day. It's learned in major yeshivot. Huge Sfarim. Unbelievable. They didn't want to take him as a Rav. And he reheard through the grapevine, they basically didn't really respect him as much because he was from that city. They knew him. And he says, now I understand Pshat. I always had this question. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Har Sinai and he's there for 40 days. And Am Yisrael is waiting for Moshe. Moshe doesn't come back. And they say, what are we going to do? They go over to Aaron and they say, Kum aseh lanu Elohim. Aaron, go make us an egel. I always ask myself a question. Here you have Aaron. He's shakul keneged Moshe. Him and Moshe are equal. Moshe and Aaron and Moshe, the Torah uses it interchangeably to show that they're both equal. And you're asking him to make an egel when you have him to be the leader. Elama, a community would rather choose an egel azahav than to take somebody that they grew up with. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Ibn Ezra writes, didn't grow up with the rest of the Jews. He grew up in the palace. And he says there was a reason for that. Hashem purposely took Moshe Rabbeinu out of his situation, out of his circumstance, to be raised in the palace, so that the rest of the Jewish population won't see him be raised. And that way, when Moshe Rabbeinu comes and leads Am Yisrael, they will respect him and fear him. So he says, En Navi Be'iro. That's the concept. There's a great story, I think it's true, but I can't say for sure, with a great man. There's two people, it's always confusing, the Radbaz and the Ridbaz. The Radbaz was 500 years ago, Egypt, a long time ago. The Ridbaz was relatively recent, maybe 100 years ago, he lived. The Ridbaz, Rabbi, I believe, Yosef David Zolovsky, I think his name is. And he is a European great Rav. And one time, he also submitted application to be the Rav of the city, and they took the application. They accepted. They accepted him to be the Rav, but they came to him and they said, there was some protest. Why? Well, Piloni, so-and-so, was not so interested in you being the Rav. Why wasn't he interested? Well, he said that he remembers as children that you two would play together. And you would play together different games. One of the games he mentioned was Ride the Pony, that you guys would play together. And the Ridbaz, without flinching, said, yes, but you should remind him that even then, he used to play the part of the pony and I was always the rider. But either way, that's the concept. The idea is, En Navi Be'iro. And Avraham Avinu had to leave in order to receive that greatness and to be like a melech, to be a king. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, Lech Lecha me'artzecha mimoratecha. There's a powerful Chatam Sofer, very much on the same area, that he says that a person to become great, he has to be golel makom Torah. In order for greatness to be established, he's supposed to go ahead and migrate from his city and learn. If a person learns away from his city and then he wants to return and come back as a Adam Gadol, that's a very different story. That's very similar to Rabbi Akiva, that he traveled far and then he was able to succeed in becoming great. Why is it enough kamina for you to know this? Because Bezat Hashem, many of you either have children that are in high school going to yeshivot, or Bezat Hashem will be having children that will be in high schools. And it's a little bit tough for a parent. The parent loves this child, doesn't want to see him leave. We want to see our children local and close and be nearby. But Adirabah, you should know this is a little bit of a radical story. So I don't mention this story often because I don't want people to take halakha le'maaseh lessons from it. But it still is a true story. And it was halacha l'maaseh in Israel. It's not the way you should do it in America. So I don't want you to misapply this, but I'm going to tell it to you for the point of the story. When Rav Ovadia had his children, of Yitzhak was a son, 13 years old, 14 years old, very young, he took him, he used to live in Tel Aviv. Rav Ovadia lived in Tel Aviv, he was the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv. And that's where his whole family lived. At 14 years old, he took his son, pretty much just a year after his bar mitzvah, or even the bar mitzvah year, one of the 2 years, he took his son, he said, come with me, we're taking you to yeshiva. And he took him all the way to Yerushalayim, and he said, you're going to be here in this yeshiva. And Ovadia's wife was protesting a little bit. She said, what do you mean? He's so young, he can't go, he's very young, he can't do it. And she was crying, she was very sad about it. And he said to her, you're crying now, but don't worry about it. He's going to become great. He needs to be there, he needs to be in yeshiva. It's an extreme story, which is why I say I don't think Shabbat. And Adarabah, I think in America, people should not leave their homes in high school. So it's a very different culture. But the point of the story is like sometimes you have to sacrifice a lot, but then your children become great. And it's not an easy thing, especially for a mother, especially for a young boy. It's not an easy thing. And today, 13 in Israel is like 18 in America. So it's like kind of like that's the equivalent. So 18-year-old boys, they go to Eretz Yisrael. It's like tough. You say, wow, there's all yeshivot here. Why do we have to go? You have Chafetz Chaim, you have Orach Chaim, you have this place, you have Lander. You have all these amazing places. And then you have Lakewood and, Chaim Berlin and all of these incredible places. And you say to yourself, why is it to go to Eretz Yisrael? What's over there? The answer is, Eretz Yisrael is goleh makom Torah. So now they made a compromise. They say, Tov, Eretz Yisrael, Miami is also goleh. There's also some Torah over there. So some people go to yeshivot in Miami. Yeshem ar ma lismoch. They have on what to rely. There's many anashim gdolim. There are great people in yeshivot, running yeshivot in Miami. You should know that. And therefore, depends what and depends where. If they're, hanging out in places they shouldn't be hanging out, obviously that's not what we're talking about. But if they're in a real yeshiva there, with anashim gdolim and a true mesorah, it's not bad at all. It's a good place to be. But Eretz HaKodesh is something special, and to send your children and to be okay with it, and to convince your wives, because it's harder for the wife than it is for the husband, but to convince them that this is the right thing to do, and it's a little bit tough, but the investment is worth it 100%, and the children become anashim gdolim, they become very great in their avodat Hashem, in their spirituality, in their connection. It's something that we have to learn, a lesson from Avraham Avinu. He needed to be separated in order for him to become great, and that's what a person needs. So En Navi Be'iro very much is associated and is connected with that as well. Tov, I think we'll stop here. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ואמן. בי חנן בקשה אומר, רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא זכו לספר